let's do another example on how to order fractions, decimals, and percents. Take a minute and try to order these from least to greatest. Okay, so again, what I like to do is split them off into different sections. So here are fractions. All right, here are our decimals, and we only have 1%. All right, so let's start with this percent. Percents are easy to look at. This is just 31%. We know how to change a decimal to a percent very easily. We move our decimal place over to the right 2 places. 1, 2. So 0.88 is the same thing as 88%. 88% is bigger than 31. Let's keep going. 0.08. We move our decimal place over 2 places. So 0.08 is the same thing as 8%, which is less than 31. .01. Well, we know that we have 8 holes here. We can still change it into a percentage. We move this decimal place over to the right 2 places, and 8.01 is the same thing as 801%, which is significantly larger than all of our other numbers. And then we have 0.9. We move our decimal place over to the right 2 places, 1, 2. Remember, even though we only have one number here, we still need to move our decimal place over to the right 2 places, no matter what. So we can add a 0 right here, because we know that adding zeros to the right of a decimal place after whole numbers do not change the value of a decimal. So this is the same thing as 90%, which is greater than 88%, but less than 801%. Now we have our 3 fractions. To change a fraction to a decimal, we use some long division. So let's look at 1/4. You might already know that 1/4 is like 1/4, or 25%, 0.12, but I'm going to show you again this using long division. So I like to taking my finger and pushing this number that's higher off into the box. So 1 goes inside, 4 stays on the outside. How many times can 4 go into 1? Well, it can't, but we'll add a decimal place and a 0. How many times can 4 go into 10? Twice. We multiply 2 times 4 is 8. Subtract 8 from 10 and we get 2. We have nothing to bring down, so we'll add a 0, bring this down and make it 20. How many times does 4 go into 20? 5 times. 5 times 4 is 20. We subtract 20 and we have no remainders, so we know that 1/4 is equal to 0.25. If we change this to a percent, we move this decimal place over 2 places to the right. So 0.25 is the same thing as 25%. 25% is greater than 8%, but less than 31. Our next fraction is 12/5. So I use my finger and I push the top number off into the box. And 5 stays on the outside. How many times can 5 go into 1? It can't, so we're going to look at our next number. How many times can 5 go into 12? 2 times. 2 times 5 is 10. We subtract. We have 2 left over, nothing left to bring down, so we have to add a 0, but remember your decimal place. Okay, now we can bring down this 0 to make 20. How many times does 5 go into 20? 4 times. 4 times 5 is 20. When we subtract, we have no remainders, so we are done with our long division. 12/5 is the same thing as 2.4. We're going to change this decimal to a percent. We move this decimal place 2 places to the right. Remember, we have a hole right here, so we can add a 0. So 2.4 is the same thing as 240%. 240% is greater than 90, but less than 108. Then our last one is 5/6. I use my finger and I push over this 5 into the box. 6 stays on the outside. How many times does 6 go into 5? It can't, so we're going to add a decimal place and a 0. How many times can 6 go into 50? 8 times, so 8 times 6 is 48. When we subtract, we get 2 left over. We have nothing to bring down, so we're going to add a 0 and bring this down instead to make 20. How many times can 6 go into 20? 3 times. 3 times 6 is 18. When we subtract, we get a 2 again. So we add our 0, and since we see that this is the number that we just did, we know it's going to be repeating 3. Okay, so 5/6 is equivalent to 0.83 repeating. 0.83, if we change this to a percentage, we move this decimal place over 2 places to the right, and we get 83%. 83% is less than 88, but greater than 31. So here's our order from least to greatest.